Nadaljujemo z naslednjo kratko predstavitvijo in zaradi pač narave gostov iz tujine bom enostavno nadaljeval v angleščini. So the studio Fidèle is our next guest, and welcome to Ljubljana. They are a part of Caffeine Hours, which is starting in I don't know what time is in 1 hour, and it's going to last until 10 in the evening, also tomorrow. Just a short introduction. Studio Fidèle is a small press and lithograph print studio from Paris. They produce books, posters, postcards, flyers, and any other paper-based prints for artists, businesses, and individuals. They are running initiation workshops along with more complex sessions regularly. Our guests, Mary Campistron, did I pronounce it good? Okay, thank you. And Mathilde Vizet, who is sitting over there, will introduce the studio and who is our who will introduce the studio. And once again, I will urge you to go downstairs and buy some of their gorgeous publications. So please give a round of applause to Mathilde.
Hello. I've never done such a thing, so bear with me. So I'm Marie, and I'm here with Margot, my friend and colleague from Fidèle. So we are a publishing house and a réseau studio in Paris. And Fidèle started in 2013 in Angoulême. It was created by 4 students who were all comic artists and wanted to publish books, their own books and other people's books. In 2014, they came across the réseau studio and the réseau machine, and they started publishing books printed by another studio. So they made the illustrations and got them printed by papier machine. And then after a year, they decided to buy their own réseau in Angoulême. And after a couple of years, in 2016, they moved to Paris. This is the first studio we got in Paris. It was in Les Grands Voisins. It's a former hospital that became a center where they had rooms for migrants, loads of charities, studios for artists, a bar, and places like that. So in Les Grands Voisins, in 2016, they started printing for customers. So that's when the publishing house also became a print service. And basically the print service funds the publishing house by printing for people flyers, wedding invites, posters. At the time it was lots of posters for charities. This allows us to publish our books. We were working with Jérôme Dubois, who had a studio space in the same building, and he published a few books with us called Cité Ruine, where he takes stories he's published in another magazine, and he removes all the human life and all the human beings and any trace of human life in his comics. So yeah, so in the Grand Voisin, this is Jérôme helping build a new space. We had a few studios, we moved from space to space over the years. And we had a small bookshop to welcome people, but it's mostly a production space. These years, from 2016 to 2017, the activity went up a lot. We published a lot of books, worked with a few artists. And in 2017, we also started being active on Instagram and showing our work and thinking about how we present it and how we reach people. And this is how the website looked like in 2017. The identity was made by one of the 4 guys who created the studio. Among these 4 people, only Vincent, who runs Fidèle, stayed printed for customers, and the other 3 focused on their own comic artist work. We also organized exhibitions. We published a book by Magali Breder, and this was very interesting, and it was it had a big impact on our work because Magali is so picky and she's so obsessed with getting the right color, the right opacity, everything has to be perfect. And this made us be very, very, very precise about how we print. I mean, not only her, but it helped. And so yeah, so we work in a way that we print the artwork. The print has to be the more similar possible to the original, and that's also we're called Fidèle. And it has to be fidèle to the artwork. Like it all comes together. So this is one of our landscapes. So we had an exhibition with her. We published a book, and we still print a lot of work for her. And in 2019, we got the keys to our new studio. It's in the city center of Paris because Les Grands Voisins closed. It was an ephemeral project that was only open for a few years, and we had to leave. So we got a new space with the city council. So I joined in 2019. Before I lived in Scotland, and I worked for Risotto, and I was the print technician and studio manager there. And now I'm the studio manager at Fidèle. We worked with so many people. You can recognize Margot. Lots of interns, lots of colleagues. And the current team, we're 3 printers plus Vincent. So only girls. And we do the everyday printing, and also we print all the books that we publish. We changed identity 2 years ago. We worked with Sometimes Always. We're based in Berlin. And yeah, over the years we got more and more colors. Now we have 36 colors. Sometimes we mix them ourselves. Last week we made copper ink. And a bigger team needs like more organization because we print for more customers. So it's a little bit less DIY and indie than it was at the beginning. But we try to keep it also indie as well. But it's more the fact that we print for lots of people make us have to be a bit more strict, I guess. And I'm going to show a few books that we printed. So we tend to publish books by emergent artists. Usually it's their first book or their second book that gets published by an editor. Prior to that, most of them have made books, but they have self-published. So Maria Medem, we printed the first edition in 2019. The book is called Echo. And at the time she was not as famous as she is now. So it was interesting to work with her, and it's a story. The whole book is lots of small comics about water. On the right page with 4 color prints, and then on the left page is 1 color print, and it's the same story that runs through the whole book. And it's you follow a cat, and it's quite meditative. And we started making apparel to celebrate when we reprint a book or we have a new edition. We screen printed sweaters. Also with Maria Medem, we screen printed another sweater because we co-published a book with that went with a vinyl. We also printed for Melek Zertal, and we're working on a new project. So Melek works between Paris and the US. And with her too, every book is a new challenge, and it's a new improvement and a new way of working. And we always try to make the most of the work and to make the artists be proud of their work. And Melek works her studio is close to ours, so she's here to make the test, and it's very collaborative. So Vincent, who runs Fidèle, also had to find a balance between running a studio, printing for customers, being a publisher, being an artist, and that's a hard balance to find. That's why we're here with Margot and Marine. We are also there, so the activity, like the studio, runs by itself with us, and Vincent can also take time to work on his personal practice. So this is a book that he made and we published. It's called Insula. And this is because we don't have an A2 printer. We don't have the biggest printer in France. We did a technique where we folded pieces of paper in two and we printed one side and then we flipped it and we printed the other side. So this is a poster with the fold in the middle. We also printed the book by Henri Crabière, who used to be an intern. And during his internship, he made this comic and we really liked it, so we published it. And it's very inspired by his own character. It's a guy who goes out in Paris at night, meets loads of absurd people, and ends up going back to see his girlfriend. And so we follow him through the night, through the parties, and with all the people he meets. We had Jérémy Perraudot, who is also a comic artist, who was renting a space in our studio. We published his small book, and we used the same technique of folding paper in two and printing on both sides to make a map. And this is the biggest technical challenge we had. It's a co-edition with 3 fois par jour, and the artist is called Idir Daven. He makes these huge paintings on paper that are really, really big, and we made a book, and every page has 6 to 8 colors. So we had to do all the pre-press, and it was really interesting to work with him because he wanted them to be similar to his painting, but we also had a lot of freedom and we could change some colors if we wanted to. And we made 1,000. So when we print, we usually, at the beginning we were doing runs of 300 copies, and now we usually print between 500 and 1,000 copies. So it stays really small, to be honest, and we print 5 to 6 different books. We release 5 to 6 different books a year. So that's another page. And it was quite technical, but so challenging and interesting. We also this book by Louise Collet, Des Éclaircies. It's all based on etchings. So we also try not to be doing books that are cool because it's Riso. We also want the books to look good because the work is good and not because it's printed in Riso and it's trendy and it's. So it's funny how people in festivals are looking at the books and are like, oh, it's Riso, and so suddenly it becomes cool. We also want them to be good for the quality of the art, the artwork that is inside. So Des Éclaircies, we have a few copies downstairs if you come by later, and it's all dry point, and it's incredibly detailed, and she draws amazingly well, and there are drawings at her grandma's house, in Japan, in the street, and she also went to visit people's gardens. We published a book by Flore Chemin, and we made a kimono based on the prints. So we also try to have fun and experiment new projects. And we worked with a friend who is a designer, and she did all the. We printed on fabric, and she did all the kimonos herself. We made one of the artists. We make a few posters, mostly by Raphaël Macaron. She's a Lebanese artist, and she works next to our studio. When 2 years ago, when the big explosions in Beirut happened, we made a big fundraiser, and we raised 92,000 euros that we gave to a charity in Beirut. And it was great. It was so much work. All the weekends we spent packing because so many people took part. So much money was raised, but then we had to print and send everything across the world. And it was so rewarding also to print books to print something that is not that has a meaning and has a purpose and feel useful, because most of the time we print our books and we sell, but it's quite niche. And then we print a lot of work for illustrators in France, but so many things are very Instagrammable, and we live in a society that produces so many images that it's just images all the time. And it's so, I don't know, it was great to also print something that is not going back, it's not, I'm not saying we are going back to the roots of Riso and we're printing political tract, but we're printing something that is helping other people, and so it was nice to feel a bit useful. And that's the last comic we printed. It's by an artist called Teddy Goldenberg, and he's from Israel. And his comic is very weird, and there's a strange humor, and you can definitely feel the political contexts in which he works and lives. So he's moving to Berlin, but there are sometimes in the book, the humor is weird in a really interesting way, and in the book you don't know if there are shadows of birds or if there are war planes. There are so many tweaks like that that you feel a bit uncomfortable and awkward. And yeah, and we really enjoyed working, like making a proper comic again, because the last few books were image books, and we like to go back to the roots of what Fidèle wants to be, and and print mostly comics. We made pins though, also because I don't know, it went well with his work. And yes, that's it. Currently, we're working on more comics. We're gonna do new drawing books, like the first books we printed with Fidèle, and that's it.
So, yes, this is the moment where I always ask, like, if everybody has a question, but I'm actually going to start, if you don't mind. So, you said that you work in small number of copies, like 300 to 1,000, which here is not small. So it sounds like a proper print business, not just a workshop, but rather a print shop. So first question, I have a couple of, but like I'll just start with one. The first question is like, how do you kind of compare to, or maybe even compete with, let's say, the offset printing print shops? What's kind of the difference, or maybe like how does your specific print technique also influence how you organize your business?
Compared to offset?
Yeah, to like traditional print shop.
I think we're the step below offset. Mm-hmm. So some of the next books we are going to publish, so because we published a few books in offset that we got printed somewhere else. There's a book we're going to print soon that we're considering printing in offset, because we're thinking, okay, RISO should be applied where it's necessary or where it's relevant. But when it's too complicated and it's not going to look as good it's going to look better in offset rather than in RISO, and it goes better with the artist's work, we are thinking that it's great to be able to produce everything yourself, but sometimes if the work looks better in offset, why not print it in offset? So maybe one of our next book will be printed in offset. For customers, usually there's a minimum order of books in offset, and when they don't reach it, we're just the technique below, basically. So that's how we're just under the offset amounts, I guess.
And what's in Paris or in France? What's that amount?
I think when it's about 1,000, it becomes good in offset. Between maybe even 500, 700 becomes okay, but under that, it's not possible.
Okay. Še kdo ima kakšno vprašanje? Dvignite roko, da prinesemo mikrofon. Ne, pa bom jaz nadaljeval. Also, I want to know, like, how do you choose artists? Is it like a collective thing, or?
So usually we come across artist work when we go to book fairs, or through Instagram. The last few people we approached are from Instagram. Now from the 4 guys who created Fidèle, 3 of them left the studio when we changed studio in 2019, and so they're not part of the board anymore to choose the books. So it's me and Vincent who choose who we are going to publish. And because we only do 5 to 6 new releases a year, we're quite specific about what we like. And we try to keep this editorial line, I guess.
Also, like, are you more like when you choose? Do you look also at the sales, or is it just like the?
No, we do so many projects that where we lose money. We don't make money with books. That's why we have to print for customers. If it was just for for us, we would publish books only because it's much more interesting to us. Maybe not to everyone, but to us, that's what we like to do most, is appointments with authors, talk about their artwork, think about how we could make the most of them, how we could, which paper would look better, which inks, advising people. That's why we like to do the most. But economically, you can't live, especially in Paris. Everything is so expensive, and we couldn't pay the wages and everything and the rent, so we have to print for customers. So we don't really look at sales. No. Otherwise, we wouldn't be publishing the work of emergent artists, I think.
And just last one, how many people actually like work now?
So we were 3, plus Vincent is the director. We're 3 employees from that you saw in the picture, and an intern.
Just a short one. So you said you work as a publisher, but also as a print studio. So
yeah.
My question is, when you work as a print studio, do you also choose who you want to print, or everybody's work?
No, we print everybody's work.
Okay.
No, we don't make a selection, and we rarely say no. If we say no, it's really because we have so much work and we can't deal with it. But usually we say yes to everything. And we also try to find a solution so it looks good in Riso and everything, but we don't make any selection.
When you said like offset in France, like because the numbers are big for here. I mean, we print offset even 200s or something here, you know. Is it the question that the print houses in France don't want to do such small print runs, or it's also the question that it's too expensive for smaller?
It's too expensive for small runs. You have to make bigger runs so it becomes okay, cost-wise. Yeah. But I guess it's also, there's so many people who do offsets now in here and in Eastern Europe in general. You're famous to have, your reputation is that you have good offset prints, like good offset presses. I guess the prices in France are a bit lower now. They used to be so much higher for offset, and I think they're coming a bit lower.
There is a lot of small print offset houses here, like garage printers that do offset. So maybe that's something that's lost in bigger countries now, especially last years, since print is not so popular anymore.
But we'll see. Maybe Riso will not be. Now it's super trendy. We are aware that maybe in 10 years it will not. We don't know. But it's okay. We will find something else to do.
An offset press.
Yeah, maybe.
Hi. It seems that for the amount of people working there, and it's like 3-4 people, and these print runs that you think are low, but we think are high, for this amount of work that you produce, it feels that, you know, with Riso, printing gets done relatively fast in comparison when you do books, when you do the finishing, when you do all the things that you have to do afterwards, after the printing to finish the book. So do you also do this in-house, or do you have people you collaborate with for all the folding, cutting, binding, everything?
We do when it's saddle stitched, we do everything. When it's perfect bound, we assemble, trim everything, and then the glue, the perfect binding step is done by, we have collaborators in Paris. And everything that is screen printed as well, it's done by someone else in Paris. Yeah. But we try to keep it close. Yeah.
Okay. Toto?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Voilà.
Yeah. So,
Thank you so much.